software.
Good evening, good afternoon.
Hoje nós teremos mais webinar. A discussão, o tópico hoje será como o Brasil e a Estônia estão se preparando para uma sociedade mais virtual. Logo mais
we're going to see how Brazil and Estonia are preparing for a digital society. I'd like to make a comment about ABIS. ABIS has as a purpose, it has to do with everything today. We want to help building a Brazil that it's more digital and less unequal, because we believe that the technology of information has a very important role in the democratization of knowledge, creation of new opportunities, looking for give better life quality to everybody, for all, in a very equal way. So we have to be, of course, working together with the government to make things happen in the society as a whole. Obviously, the role of ABIS in this way is to make sure that here in Brazil, we have a appropriate or a model for that, for innovation, and it has to be dynamic, ethical, and competitive globally. We have more than 2,000 companies related to connected to ABIS, micro and small companies, and we create more than 200,000 jobs. 63.7 billion is the revenue, including the 22 states plus the federal district, ABIS, next week. We're celebrating 33, actually not 33, but 34 years of age. Before speaking about the panel and everybody's participation, I'd like to highlight a very important point here in Brazil, because we're discussing and implementing the LGPD, which is a general law for data protection. And that's a project that ABIS implemented, which is the tool that helps the companies to diagnose the adherence and the compliance that they have related to the guidelines and the directives. It's an online tool, free of cost. It's a solution that ABIS found to help the society as a whole, identifying the gaps that the companies have to have a total adherence to the compliance of the general protection law, the general data protection law. So you go straight to the tool. It was built together with Ernst and Young, that agency. It's extremely interesting. Another consequence of this tool is that around 1,500 companies or organizations, they have already used this tool for diagnosis, and the outcomes is the level that we developed together with Ernst Young, showing at this moment that practically only 40% of the companies that did actually are appropriate, or are in compliance, as a matter of fact, with the requirements of LGPD. For the next events, ABIS is supporting new events. Next week, we're going to have smart cities. ABIS is working with urban management and an improvement for public services. So on September 10th, we're going to have this webinar. And then we're going to have in September the big event of ABIS, having lots of speakers. Thales Teixeira from Harvard, he's going to be speaking about this transformation. Dal Bajadas and Web, Nick Davis from Similarity. And we're going to have a big discussion, actually rethinking, refreshing our knowledge during this times, that we're all living together. So see what we have in mind. And today, of course, we're going to have a very interesting chat, because the government is actually living this crazy moment affected by the pandemic. Today, you're going to have the participation of Florian Marcus, coming straight from Estonia. He's going to speak English, but we have available simultaneous translation into Portuguese. Florian is dedicated, or totally or partially, in digital transformation. Also, he works in the briefing center of Estonia. It's a place that receives visitors, you know, people that would like to have a better view, and how to Estonia implemented all this digitalization program within the government. He has a master's degree in political science and safety studies. Then after Florian, we're going to have Ciro Avellino. Ciro works for the economy ministry. He's a secretary working together with the digital government, co-founder of GovHackers. We're going to also have Daniel Ramalho. He works for the technology and innovation department in the City Hall of São Paulo. He's very experienced in digital issues. And also to wrap up, we're going to have Daniel Einberg. He works for the city of São Paulo, being a former secretary for innovation and technology. He was a supervisor, a very important president for Poupa Tempo and also the DTran website, which are the services that are very important to the population of state of São Paulo. Before starting the webinar, I would just like to say that the webinar will be available. It's going to be recorded, and it's going to be available through our YouTube channel, the YouTube ABIS channel. And we're going now live through by YouTube. I'd like to thank all the team of ABIS to actually put together this webinar with all this structure with a remote translation. Thanks for the sponsors, Aberta Capital, BR Angels, Bossa Nova, Kivo, Startup Farm, and Brasil, País Digital, each participant. So we're going to speak around 10 minutes each. How you guys see all the transformation at this moment, what's the role of the government, and with the pandemic, what has changed? What are the perspectives? What are your views on this moment, and what is the role of the government, of your government, that really, because basically all the society, we migrated from one way to another, to almost total virtual way. So each of you will have 10 minutes, and everybody that is interested in asking questions, you will actually, you can ask your questions there. You can also do that through Zoom or post your comment in our YouTube channel. I'd like to give the floor to Florian. It's night already in Estonia, right? So we just had lunch, and we just had a little black coffee after lunch. So Florian, floor is yours. Thank you so much for being here. Thanks for your availability.
Thank you so much for the kind introduction. I would like to have lunch and a nice coffee right now. So good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are around the world. My name is Florian Marcus, and I am, as was already said, working for the eStonia Briefing Center. Now, one topic that Rodolfo sort of started at the beginning of his introduction was that of accessibility. And I think there are different stages to accessibility, which also very nicely describe what Estonia is going through right now and has been going through for the last 10 or 20 years. Quite frankly, there are different stages. The first one is to bring all of your offline government services online, to maybe even copy them one-to-one, that they have the same structure, they take exactly as much time as they do on paper. That's the very first step. That was the case in Estonia around the early 2000s, but was quickly overthought because people were not very interested in starting to do all of those services online, because they had to learn a new way of working without getting any benefits, no time savings, no financial savings. So there was not a real attraction for them in digital services. So this very quickly switched Estonia towards a mode of governance where they would rethink all of the different administrative procedures from the ground up, which would mean that, for example, the online tax declaration in Estonia takes 3 minutes on average, rather than, as it does on paper, 3 hours or more. And this means that today, 96% of income tax declarations in Estonia are filed online, which includes not just the young and the well-educated, but also the elderly, the less educated, the rich, the poor, and so on. So this brings me back to the topic of accessibility. If you save people's time, if you solve problems for them, the odds that they will do these things online are much, much higher. Regardless of their background, gender, race, whatever it is. What we're currently working on and have already partially implemented is the next stage of accessibility. We call them proactive government services. Proactive government services mean that the government will provide a service or offer me that service when the government knows that I am entitled to that service. For example, when a child is born in Estonia, for the last 20 years already, the doctor would register the birth of the child and would create a personal code for the baby, so like a citizen's number, and connect that citizen's number to the two numbers of the parents, because they are the legal guardians in this case. So then parents started asking, well, if that's already happening, the government knows everything that it needs to know, why don't I just get a notification in my state portal online that says, congratulations on the birth of your child. To which bank account do you want the child benefit payments? You know, it's a very straightforward question when you think about it. And that's why this proactive service came online in October last year. And it is the first of many more to follow. For example, we can automate retirement payments. For example, we could automate school registrations, which would also mean that schools can plan the attendance in 6 years, because kids go to school when they're age 6. So they can already start building new classrooms, they can start training new teachers and so on. So this is what we're doing right now and for the next couple of years. The ultimate step that we see after that is the sort of logical conclusion of how humans communicate. The truth is that I think we have a very nice government website. It's called eesti.ee, eesti.ee. You can check it out. But it's very user-friendly, but it's still a website. And humans are not born communicating with websites. It's something that we learn. What we are born with and what we're taught even earlier is usually how to speak. So the logical conclusion, in my opinion, is why don't we create a language interface that the citizens and residents in this country can use to get their services online. I want to give you an example. Let's imagine that you are a woman, you're pregnant, you're Estonian, but you're currently in Finland, you're abroad, and you are about to go into labor. You're about to get your baby. Now, this is, of course, a very critical moment. You don't have enough time to go back to Estonia. What do? Well, how about you just activate the voice assistant on your phone and you tell your voice assistant, I'm about to go into labor. And then the voice assistant says, I'll be back with you in 30 seconds. And within those 30 seconds, it starts all of the different processes that are required or should be offered in this context. So the AI within those 30 seconds would contact the closest the closest Finnish hospital and forward your medical data to that hospital. It would also alert an ambulance to your location so that they can pick you up where you are right now. It would also alert the Estonian embassy in Helsinki to make them aware that new paperwork, the ID, the passport for the baby has to be printed. And then, of course, it would also start the government benefits, so child benefits and other financial support systems. So all of these things could be done by AI. They could be done by voice assistants. And we believe that this is, at least for the time being, the culmination of our digital services, because they are, as far as we can see, the most user-friendly way of providing services. In general, we plan on having more than 50 AI and algorithm solutions in the Estonian government sector by the end of this year. If I would just mention one, perhaps, just to get the conversation started, what we already have in place is an algorithm in the Unemployment Office of Estonia, and we are using that algorithm to connect vacancies, job vacancies, with unemployed people looking for work. And it might feel counterintuitive to some of us. It did to me when I first heard it. But the success rate of the algorithm in connecting people with jobs is actually higher than for the humans, even those that have been working there for many, many years. Because ultimately, it is possible to categorize humans on some different statistics, on some different standards and characteristics. So we thought that using more and more algorithms and AI solutions in the public sector is certainly the way forward. That is not to say that there are no ethical challenges on the way. And if this will be part of the discussion today, that is great. But certainly we will have this discussion over the next few years, not just in Estonia, but also around the world, of course, including Brazil. I think I would actually yield my time, and I'm looking forward to, first of all, the other participants' talks and also the questions afterwards. Thank you very much.
Muito obrigado, Florian.
Thank you very much, Florian. Well, it is impressive when you talk about these topics in the comments you make about the potential of a technology or a set of technologies, especially when you mentioned about the birth of a child, how to connect everything to the organizations and the support to the mother in labor and to the child that is going to be born. I mean, especially for those who are not in Estonia, who are abroad. So how the technology can allow for these services to be provided. It's wonderful to see technology being applied in the things it can do. Well, now let's call Ciro Avelino. He works for the Brazilian government, and the Brazilian government has a very big challenge ahead because it's a big country with 220 million inhabitants, with several regions and many setbacks to overcome. And there are extremes in terms of inequality and wealth balance. So the challenges are great, but we have seen some advances in many aspects in Brazil too. So Ciro, the floor is yours. Once again, thank you for accepting this invitation. Hello, Rodolfo. I would like to wish you all a good afternoon or a good evening. I mean, this thing of the pandemic and virtual events allow us to do that, to interact with people in their own time. Some people are with us now, some people will watch this later. Anyway, I hope you all are well and taking care of yourselves. Thank you very much. On behalf of the Digital Secretary and the Ministry of Economy of Brazil, I'd like to thank for this invitation. That's the second time I take part in a relevant event promoted by ABIS. Thank you for this space so we can talk about digital government, which is such an important topic to us. Thank Annenberg, Daniel Blasio, and Florian Marcus, who brought us some interesting topics about Estonia. I'd like to tell you that Estonia is a reference in terms of digital transformation. Islin Sikkert was here with us in the previous Innovation Week, so we rely on the Estonian experience to tap into the things that you have done. Our context is somewhat more complex, I would say, just like Rodolfo Ficker said, and it's up to us to make this transition on what we see abroad. We really like what you do in Estonia, but we need to adapt this to fit in our context. Let me talk about digital government, what it is to us. Inside the digital government department, we do not discuss the intensive and massive application of technology in what already exists. For us, this is not digital transformation. I mean, to take an offline process and turn it into an online or digital process, this is not transformation. For us, digital transformation is precisely us as government see ourselves as a service providers. We are there to provide services to society. This is what people wait from us and want from us. And when you do that, we need to understand why. You need to be centered on the citizens and society to better understand their needs. And what is the digital role in this setting? Well, in society that we interact today, it is a digital society. If we talk about TIC-BR, we have 70 to 75% of people, Brazilian people, having regular access to internet already. Obviously, we still have to cover 25% of the population, but 75% of Brazilians use mobile devices to access the internet. They carry with us internet and they are connected from the time they wake up to the time they go to bed, accessing digital services, and this changes how society interacts with the government and among citizens. And when we realize digital technology changes how people interact, we need to understand that this society has changed. The expectation on service deliverance is bigger, is more deeper. People are more they want more convenience, responsiveness, and accessibility. They are getting used to that, and the government needs to deliver that. There is an Argentinian, Pian Mancini, in a TED Talk in Brazil. She said that today, and this is a reality in our country, in Brazil, we have 21st century citizens used to doing daily online interactions, but they have to deal with structures which are full of hierarchy. Just they seem like 19th century transactions, and they sometimes use 15th century technology like the press, stamps and pens, pencils. So we need to face that and to tackle that. We got ready in 2018, and we have accelerated with the new government. This digital transformation. After a large survey, we have over 3,700 services, and we needed to understand that, to map that, and we have over 3,700 services provided by the government. 60% of them are already in the online world, and still need to cover 40% of them. To transform this 40%, and this is our challenge in what we call digital government strategy, provided by a decree that was passed last April. This decree, this law, this bill was not a strategy built by only the government. It was a bill built by the whole society and launched in April during the pandemic. So considering all the challenges, over 50 initiatives, 18 goals in terms of digital government, they could all respond to this process of acceleration of moving towards the digital world, which was triggered by the pandemics. So since January, before the pandemics, we have digitalized 800, 850 services since which used to be offered physically and now are offered digitally to the society. And if you are to understand, from March to here, we digitalized 30 services. During the pandemics, we work 24/7 to transform the services into digital services to guarantee, to make sure Brazilian citizens access citizenship. If you're going to estimate the savings of this digitalization, it's like 2 billion a year to the population and 531 in savings for the government. If you turn this into hours, the time you take going to a place to get a service, then we could save 150 million hours of bureaucracy less. Yesterday, I was watching to a live to our secretary, and he said, it is like we have instituted a counter holiday of bureaucracy in the region of São Paulo. It's like one day we get back or give back to the population. Instead of going to places to get services, they can have time, that's their time for their own activities. We are talking about some services which are key, like the help that the government gave to over 60 million people during this time of pandemic. And another example is a safety employment allowance for some workers, especially house workers. 380,000 people requested this service, and we accelerated this. There are many other services I could mention here. I would recommend, if you want to know more about what we've been doing and know the work and the goals and the access of digital government strategy, this is simple. We have gov.br and / digital strategy. You can clearly see the goals we have till 20 and 22. We want a government to be more centered on the citizen, more citizen-oriented, more reliable, that works clearly and has more efficiency. These are the goals and the pillars of our strategies. In this portal, you can see all of these initiatives. There you can see all the challenges we have. I'd like to highlight the digital identification work. We have worked with authentication services to access digital services. For federal services, they do not need to memorize login and password. They have other forms of accessing according to LGPD, the Data Protection General Law, within accesso.br. And let me talk about one special case we've been involved with, which is precisely depicts how the government should get ready to meet the needs of the digital society. I believe the government must have a clear understanding of the society needs, work in an integrated fashion, and experiment new ways of interacting with this digital society. And for me, there is a project that is going on right now that exemplifies all of that, which is a pilot project in a big partnership with Serpro Data Prev and Digital Secretary, INSS, and many other institutions we are promoting to the elderly who need to prove that they are alive to keep getting their retirement pensions. We have a life proof through my INSS application with facial recognition using biometrics, which is already captured within the TSE database. So we will stop seeing those terrible scenes of people going to a bank or to an institution to prove that they are alive, that they are entitled to get their pensions. So this is the kind of service the government can provide to a society that is digital. Not all of us are digital, but most of us have devices, and they want digital services. We need to tap into that and do that. We need a government that is that understands the needs of this digital society, that understands the society, that works with different technologies and tries different technologies also to transform the processes, and that is integrated. It's time to the government to tear down some walls and exchange information not only within the government, but interacting with associations and private initiatives, private companies to create initiatives. I'll make a joke. I don't know if it's translatable, but it's like, it's not translatable. We are all part of the government. We are all the government. We are the government, and we need to interact and find a place to everyone. And we need to bridge this gap of almost 5 centuries of technology used to, so to let go of stamps and press and get to the natural language interaction and other technologies, and find a way to provide good services to the citizens through these services. Thank you very much, Rodolfo, and now back to you. Thank you very much, Ciro. I am a witness of this attempt to provide better services in the digital format to our population. I have already installed all the apps the government has implemented or has provided, and one of them I find wonderful. I have my eCPF, I mean, I have my license, and well, I had to help a retired man. He was having a hard time getting his pensions. Last year, he couldn't go to the institution, and he spent 2 months without getting his pensions. So things went back to normal, but those 2 months that he didn't get his pension were withheld. So I used one of these apps, and I requested these 2 outstanding payments, and within 2 days or 3 days, everything was wired into his account. And I would like to thank and congratulate you for the services you have promoted in the city of São Paulo, like Poupa Tempo, which is a service has a history of providing services, agile services and processes to the population. And another one I always talk about, which is the blue zone, Zona Azul. It's a way to find parking spaces to park your car, and it's all digital. And I mean, among many other services the city of São Paulo has promoted and has developed. In this sense, I would like to call Daniel Glaesel to talk about, I mean, from the standpoint of the city, of a municipality, how to deal with this digitalization process under or within a context of developing services to promote quality of life and meet people's needs, especially now when we are in a more virtualized society. And I would like to ask the others to check the Zoom chat. We have some questions at the chat box, and then you can check these questions. So Daniel, now the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you and good afternoon, everybody. I'd like to really thank the invitation of ABIS. It's such a great satisfaction for us in the City Hall of São Paulo and the Secretariat of Technologies, so we can have the space to discuss this topic, which is really relevant, really nice, and tell you what we already done and show the data. And I'd like to say hello to Florian, Cito, and Daniel Engelberg. Start speaking about I'm actually taking advantage of what Ciro said and Rodolfo to discuss a theme that within the structure of the Brazilian government, it's very complex. Ciro said that it's important to interact, public and private. It's important to actually break barriers, but I think we have old barriers still to break, to surpass. I mean, it's complex, The challenge in Brazil is hard. We have internal barriers within the cities, within the state governments and the federal governments. And when we see these 3 governments all together, things get even worse. We've been working, we work with the Blue Zone, Zona Azul, which is a parking system type of charging. and it's going to bring benefits to the citizens because the service now it's going to be in partnership with a private company. And taking this challenge in mind, we have actually we're very glad we have the good structure to actually serve the population. Since we are in the middle of a pandemic, the advances of the federal government have been nice. I mean, this emergency help that the government is giving, this emergency type of welfare that the government is doing, all these measures that came during the pandemic, and the government is actually helping. We need to serve the people that need help. And then when we had problems in the app for the digitalization service of this welfare was kind of chaotic in the beginning, but we actually worked hard in order. We opened this to actually bring the population in and understanding that there was a need for us to really give a good support to the population, because sometimes there was not even a problem of the apps, but the problems was old database stuff that actually got the whole thing is stuck because it was supposed to be very fluid and very smooth. We have a challenge in our hands, and these challenges usually come in stages. And then I agree with Ciro, we have to have new services. But of course, that we have to work with things that already exist. We've been working strongly here in the City Hall of Sao Paulo to actually improve even more, give priority to kind of redo some services that are there, but they're just useless. So here, the City Hall of São Paulo, since 2017, we have a gigantic move in services digitalization. It was approved by we elected our state government representatives because of that. And we met the promises that we made. I mean, we promised something, we did it, and actually we surpassed that. The services that were previewed to be done in these first stages of digitalization. So all the efforts are bringing big benefits. So a person that needs to do a proof of life maybe needs a card, like an elderly person card, to actually take a public transportation or maybe park his private car at a specific place. And he does that virtually. So virtually, a citizen can do that using the services offered by the City Hall of Sao Paulo. So we met all the expectations, but we took that in seriously. We were looking for new ways, new paths to do these things. And we tried to work these new logics for public digitalization. We created a new department, a new secretariat. So Innovation and Technology Secretariat was created in 2017 to actually reach technological innovation, but also lato sensus. I mean, really to generate that within the city government in São Paulo. Anhenberg was one of the mentors of implementing this idea in São Paulo. This idea was actually very well done. We have teams dedicated to digitalization. We have teams dedicated to digital inclusion. Some people have smartphones in their hands, but they don't know how to do it. They don't know how to use their data. Just don't know. We have difficulties in the ability of these people to interpret the structure of the services that they used to be done, how it is positioned in the public structure, because it's pretty much more like, like legalizing things. And then Florian mentioned the natural language. Yes, we need to do that. We need to be more humanized, even if it's a digital platform, but we have to be more and more human, even though we're digital. So the work comes, we have to have a more humanized language, but very simple at the same time, and that's what we really want to do here in the city of São Paulo. How to put the city hall, all of the city hall, working with a simple language, without technical terms, without all that vocabulary. So the person on the other side of the counter understands the steps. He or she knows what she asked for is going to be given. So I think this is really important. I'd like to see it. Another element that it's interesting too is about our innovation lab in the City Hall. In 2017, we created this lab and it was very big to actually experiment the innovations and to work on those innovations to search the redesign or the remodeling of the structures of the ways to give appropriate support to that. So then we don't want to digitalize the bureaucracy. We don't want to do that. We want to see it in another way, to see all the movements inside the City Hall. We want to train and make our employees to know how to do it, because actually there's no use in putting new technologies if the personnel doesn't know how to do it, you know what I mean, to work it. So we're redesigning the processes, but we want to monitor each of these projects, understanding the journey of the citizen. How does that citizen, by his point of view, how does he access that? Why does he search things? And then what does he see? And then design that focus on the user's experience, looking for a data interface, a front end model appropriate within the technological structure. So the focus is in quality, service of quality, and we created a policy of serving the citizen. Not only we have we have a successful program, which is Poupa Tempo, made by the government of the state of São Paulo, which is saving time in making documents, but in terms of the response of the citizen, how they evaluate the quality, we still we have even a better quality than the citizen is waiting for. But not only in these services that are really, really good, take these good experiences, why is it so well evaluated, and make it as a standard, and make all the other government bodies to do that, digitalized or even presentially. So the focus on the citizen journey, this is a big thing, because we've been really paying attention to this, we're really giving emphasis to this. And I'd like to wrap up saying that we are looking for unification of channels. We have a big platform, which is not from this government, it's from previous governments of interface of the citizen. It's the 956. We have to really win resistance. Before we saw some resistance because this service was not so good. And then it's always like that. When something that is not so good, the citizen really thinks only of the bad points. Oh, that doesn't work. So we're really trying to break that paradigm. And just to end, we want to have as a goal, centralize many access points of the digital or remote services within this unified line, in order to make that as a big service hub to the citizen. And we are implementing a new leg on this, which is a new contract to this 156, which is an investment in technology, in how to make a contact with the population, really based on the experience that we had in the last 4 years. So being more well-structured, based in innovation, technology in the municipality of São Paulo. So I'm going to give the word back to Rodolfo. Thank you so much, Daniel. Thanks, excellent approach. And I think that the next talk by Daniel Einberg is going to be really nice too, because it's very good to know and to remind us. And I think it happens the same in Estonia, right, Florian? I think all the public sector people that work for the government, to do anything of activity, they have to follow what's under some regulation and rule and law. So when the private sector, The only thing he can't do, it's what's prohibited. In the public sector, he needs to do, or they need to do all that's there, nothing different than that. So I imagine how difficult it is, or it was for you to see. Obviously, of course, you have to make the regulations all right, I mean, to put them in order. And then we have a very experienced person in the process of digital transformation that took part of many interesting programs. The other day, I was joking with Daniel Einberg that I was carrying his autograph, this little piece of paper, this autograph in my pocket, because he's the one who actually signed my driver's license years ago. Oh my gosh. So I know. Daniel, the floor is yours. Thank you so much for accepting our invitation.
Good afternoon, everyone. I would like to thank Rodolfo and Abis for this invitation. Abis is a wonderful institution that we have that works so well to innovate digitalization and modernize our services. There is much to be done. I would like to congratulate Florian, Sirio, and Danielle, and I would like to congratulate you on your talks. And by the way, Daniel, I have followed the government of São Paulo, and it's very interesting. And Ciro too. Ciro talked about what the Brazilian government, the federal government has been doing, and we have advanced so much in terms of electronic services. Now, Rodolfo, let me take another end of this subject. Let us discuss what we still need to do to advance this program. It's interesting to understand what has been done so far, but we need to understand what is yet to be done. So the integration of levels of government and institutions, it's very hard to do this integration. It's very hard to integrate all of these institutions and levels of government and understand the technology. You at ABIS, and you all know that you have IoT and you have chatbots and you have many other technologies. So it's not about the absence of technology. You have technologies to spare, but you need to connect them all into the right services. I was together to write the bill that Daniel talked about, the bill that will regulate these services. And the idea is to make this bill to turn into a federal law, not only a state law. And there's also the issue of e-bureaucracy. There's no point in turning the usual bureaucracy into electronic bureaucracy. You need to simplify things. So from the standpoint of the population, I'm still very concerned, and let me talk about that. So to do away with digital inequality, we need to provide people with access to internet. We know that Ciro has that 75% of the population, 75% of the population have access to the internet, but I worry a lot about the 30% of those who do not have access to the internet. So this is an issue that it's central to all of us. It's key to discuss and understand how we can bridge this gap. Otherwise, it will increase this inequity, this inequality. We cannot leave people behind in this digital revolution. So how can we do away with this digital bridge, this digital gap? I mean, so we need to come up with plans, municipal plans, state plans, and federal plans. In the municipality of São Paulo, we have advanced. We have 300 Wi-Fi points in the city now, but it's not enough. We need more. So how can we bridge this gap? We need to focus on that. If we do not focus on that, we will leave people behind, and that's not possible. We shouldn't do that.
Then we need to we need to concern ourselves with the digital literacy. 59% of Brazilian people say that they do not use the internet to study or to work. Only 31% of the people use computers and with a calculation spreadsheet, for example. So even if you have 75% who have access to the internet, there is a big part of the population who they do not know how to use, they are afraid to use, and they need help to understand how to use this technology. So how can we create a culture of services, of electronic services? So we need a service that is going to be provided and to need the access, but we need people who know how to use these services. It's not only the low-income people, the vulnerable people, but other layers of the society don't know how to use the e-services provided by the government. Just like 30 years ago, some people didn't know how to use the e-banking or the banking, electronic banking system. So we had a project which is called Uncomplicated Digital Services, Descomplica Digital. So the idea was to promote an idea and to let people know that they could do the services, they could do the things that they need to do at home using their mobile phones and not on site always. But it takes a transition. We need to work hard to achieve this new paradigm. So we will have for a long time to come the on-site services, I mean offline services together with online services. So we need to have access or provide access to jobs that require high-skilled, high level of skills, and face or tackle three levels: infrastructure, so the public has access to a good technology park, and in the public arena, computers needs to be replaced every couple of years. And this is a challenge for us because we have some bureaucratic laws, not always we have resources. Sometimes we have a hard time putting together a school or a health unit. And so this resources need to be considered. So, I mean, one of the most big problems is how to manage this. And we need to have training, to have capacity building programs so that employees, the staff, understand how to use that. I mean, the public servants need to be ready to use the services. Our public servants are, most of them are still with the mind of the 18th century. We need to change that. And we need to have a digital transformation within our arena, within the institutional level. And in conclusion, in order to promote this digital transformation, on one hand, we need to bear in mind that any digitalization process has to be thought not only from the perspective of the citizens, Ciro and Danielle discussed that, but with the citizen. I mean, co-creating prototypes or co-creating pilot programs. What Ciro is doing is wonderful. He has I know that he has been doing some pilot projects with citizens, and public servants need to be trained to find solutions, not have a technology and then find a way to use this technology. No, to create pilots, to have prototypes, we need to consider the importance of labs. We have several government levels and several government tiers, and sometimes they get in the way, they hinder us because people, I mean, people from startups, they have a lesson to teach us, which is that it's okay to fail, it's okay to make mistakes. This will lead us ahead. There's no point in digitalizing only one area or only one field. And because we have silos, government silos or barriers, we see the citizen who needs now health services or retirement or pension services. No, but we need to see the citizens as in their whole. They will need health services one day, then they will need other services in the other day. And for example, the students during this pandemics, they couldn't have classes. Many of them could not attend classes virtually. And you need to understand why. Because there is a huge inequality in this country, which also reflects into digital inequality. And this is why ABIS, I congratulate you on talking about that we need to bridge to do away with this digital gap. This digital inclusion is key now, and the pandemics is here to show to us. It's not only for some people, it's not only about sanitation or transportation or education. If we do not have digital inclusion, there's no point in thinking about that. This is digital inclusion is key for us to decrease this level of inequality. So these are just some points for us to consider what we need to do ahead. We have done a lot, and I would like to congratulate the federal, state, and municipal governments, but we still have a long way to go. So we need to openly face so we can reach a better situation to the whole of the Brazilian society. Thank you very much. Thank you, Danielle. By the way, you talked about some extremely important issues, and the pandemic is here to show to all of us how important digital inclusion is in a given way. I mean, even statistically, almost 30% of the youth who are in these residences, who are in these houses with no access to the internet, they couldn't attend virtual classes, like you said. So this inequality, it got worse in Brazil with the pandemic. This is a topic that needs to be faced. It's not about electricity or basic sanitation, health sanitation. We need to bridge this gap. We need to promote digital inclusion. This year, it will go deeper. I believe it will get worse, but we need to think about the future to close this gap as soon as possible. Now, let me select some questions. Some of the questions were already discussed by Daniel Annenberg. I don't know, Florian, how is the average age group in Estonia? I mean, about the digitalized services, but tell me, how could Estonia made sure that the Estonian population got trained, especially the elderly, I mean, on how to use these technological resources? Can you talk about this dynamics in Estonia? And I know that the level of internet connection in Brazil, it's 75%. In reality, this places Brazil as the fifth largest market of internet in the world. But how was this dynamics in Estonia, or how has it been, this process of making sure people have access and also making sure people are trained, the citizens of Estonia are trained and ready to use the apps that you provide? Thank you.
Yeah, you point out the two most important points. First of all, you have to have the technical access, and then you have to have the intellectual capability to access. So the technological part, we have, or the government has focused from the very start on building our internet infrastructure, both in terms of broadband and mobile. I believe we reached a 95% 4G coverage in 2013, and we are now basically at 100, I'm going to say 98, 99%. About education, well, this is one advantage that Brazil actually has over Estonia. Yes, you have more people, but and yes, they also live in rural areas, just like in Estonia. But you also have more money at your disposal than Estonia, as a poor post-Soviet nation, had in the early 1990s. Since the late 1990s, Estonia had two big programs that were called sort of collectively Tiger Leap. The first part of the program was to bring internet and computers and computer lessons into every single school in the country. To educate the young population. The second step was part of a program called Look at the World, which was sort of imagine big circus tents with which the government moved through every single village in the country, and they were filled with computers and mice and printers and so on to educate the population. This is what a mouse click looks like. That's how you open your browser. You know, this is a left click and so on. Because you can have all the exciting online services, but if people don't know how to open Google Chrome, then they're not going to get there. The good news for Brazil is, first of all, you have more money to do this. And second, also you are starting this journey a bit later than we did. Many people already know how to use a smartphone. Of course, not everyone, but I think the journey back in 1998 was a bit harder than it will be for you in 2020. So that's good.
Muito obrigado, Flória.
Thank you, Florian. Thank you very much. I'd like to now, Ciro, could you make some comments? I don't know if you had the chance of reading any of the comments or questions submitted through the chat. If yes, could you talk a little bit about that? Because one of the points, one of the points of these comments is precisely access. We know that access is no longer about a cable connectivity. It is changing. Most of Brazilian regions, they do not have cable connectivity. They will go directly to a Wi-Fi 4G network, or maybe even 5G. They will burn stages, let's say. They will jump or skip stages, because now cable connectivity would be yesterday technology. As Florian said, we have more money, yes, but we have bigger challenges, I would say, because Brazil is gigantic and so on. So, Ciro, to you.
Thank you, Fusher. Yeah, it's just, I mean, we are within the Ministry of Economy to see that the money is not as much as we think, especially for us in the government. We've been having a lot of fiscal crisis for long years already. Of course, we do have investment resources, but they're not so available as we needed, promote a digital evolution as we need. But I'd like to highlight some points of Einberg and Florian Marcus. Oh, guys, some marketing, merchandising here. I don't know if you're able to see. This is a screen of a presentation of mine. gov.br slash governo digital, and so on and so on. So the last one, pesquisa usuários, it's for the ones that like to be users of our things, and then, well, you can do whatever you want. I mean, put it, yeah, and then you guys, Daniel, Florian, whatever, you guys put links, do whatever as you want, right, there at the chat. I didn't see who asked the question, but still, for the ones who'd like to register with us, you can do that, right? gov.br slash users, usuários. I'd like to comment on 2 points. Estonia started this transformation in 2002, right, Florian? 2002. So we're like 20 years later. So the technology is much more available today, as you mentioned. But what Daniel said, we don't have, I don't know, we just don't know. We don't have access, but we don't know how to use it. Now, a majority of the population just are illiterate in that kind of thing. So we have the build forbidden the 3.6. I mean, we need to work with solutions that work with low connectivity and in the devices that have a low capacity, because the Brazilian person sometimes doesn't have ability or memory or photos. When I speak about connectivity, and this is quite key, because when we start working with the government, we're not just talking about where they don't have an antenna, they don't have connection because they're far away. Sometimes in São Paulo, you have 4G and tests of 5G, and they just don't have connectivity because his prepaid plan in the middle of the month, he doesn't have the package of 4G anymore. So it sucks. Even though the person is in big centers, in a city like São Paulo, they don't have a total connectivity sometimes. And then just to wrap up my talk here, is the matter of content. So we're integrating the government. We are actually working together with the city of São Paulo, the government, because they're really advancing that simple language, the language that the citizens talk in the streets. So we have a department there. It's DEUX. So it's the Department of Users Experience. It's like God is over or above everybody, because that kind of like is an acronym for God in Portuguese. So anyway, we use messages apps, but we don't use the apps of the government. Well, because we don't know maybe how to make a good government app using language that the citizens know. So the government needs to work on connectivity, work in everything, but also work in content to how the citizens understand and can enjoy that service, being easy, being smooth, being with the language that people know. So I invite all of you from the government, Danielle mentioned that too. We work together with the school INAPI. It's called Transform, it's like capacitagov.br. We more than 3,000 agents worked, so it's inside the digital school of the government. We have basic and advanced courses, and Professor Mark Moore from Harvard School, they say that we have 3 pillars to promote transformations in society. And then these 3 pillars are people. So we have to sensibilize the leadership. So the Brazilian leadership needs to be sensitive to what is happening. So we have to focus in the capacity of the user. We have to really take a look on the people that we serve. And the other thing is that the people that work in the government, within the government. So these 3 pillars are key for. So it's people, people, and people. Leaders, public sectors, and citizens. 3P. People, people, and people, because technology is not going to change the world. The technology people through the technology will actually change the world. So there is one detail that I'd like to call your attention on, and we saw this happening last year. The INSS in Brazil, which is the social security kind of thing that we have here in Brazil. It was the first department that actually signed with us. So this INSS was the first government department that did that with us. So in 6 months they did that. They became totally digitally. In October last year, they did the opposite. So only 10% was actually still doing presentially. And then what's really which is a very big impact, is the INSS. They actually changed physical to digital, and they could help the ones that didn't have access to digital. So nowadays, a person that still needs to go presentially there has great service if they go there presentially. And actually, the ones that don't, so you have great connectivity and great digitalization in that part, but then the ones that still don't have that can go and be very well served presentially. So we're speaking about 500 million reais that were applied in other areas. So they were not actually saved, but they were able to be applied in other areas because of this really good digital transformation and how this state government invested in forming and training people to do that, because people are used to do that, and we need to actually free and release people and also money in order to train professionals that are capable in working with the digital world, because otherwise you're going to be obsolete. I'm sure that there are some gaps, right? Sometimes even the industry, the super modern technological jobs actually have problems in finding people that are able to work and to assume those job positions. Till this Sunday, though, we have a contest of temp worker to work for us. We have 350 openings to work in these squads. So you have to work within the ministry. So the ones that want to be, that have profiles in users experience and information technology, we really want to reinforce that. So we want to work and serve our Brazilian society the best as we can. Thank you so much. Ciro. Actually, in the chat, you can see all the links that Ciro mentioned. Another colleague, I think Cristiano Florian already made his links available to Danielle. The floor is yours now, and please your final comments and general suggestions. I mean, it's nice also if you comment a little bit on all the actions that the City Hall of São Paulo has about accessibility, the antennas and so on. So how are you guys doing that?
Well, I will understand that it's me, this Daniel here, not the other, right? Okay, just to make sure about, just let me say that we cannot spread the word about any links because we are under the electoral law now, so we are prevented from talking about links and sharing links. But we do have a series of content from the Innovation Lab that I talked about, and also the teams of service digitalization and the teams who work on services, but I cannot share any links with you right now because there are some weeks from elections now, from municipal elections, so you cannot, but we do have some contents, maybe more in a more private interaction. I could share one or two information with you. But now let me focus on two specific issues. Rodolfo, when he talked about adaptation of legislations, I agree with you. We face a major challenge regard legal frameworks here in Brazil. And within the City Hall, we were just discussing about compliance regarding LGPD, how we can comply with this data protection general law. We have to face complex issues regarding how to make some instruments provided by LGPD compatible with other tools. It's obvious that everything can be understood in a different way. It is prone to interpretation, and interpretations can be different. We never know what's inside a government structure, how this will be construed by or understood by controllership or controlling authority. So this is a challenge. I have experience with legal issues. I have had the opportunity of working with technology and legal aspects. I worked at
Prodan, and now I work in the innovation department. But anyway, it's hard for the Brazilian society to advance not only in this matter, but in many other aspects, precisely because of the complexity and the lack of care we have with our legal framework. Our legal framework is already full of details and legislate too much from my standpoint. And we still need to link the legal framework items to the developments, technological developments. This hinders understanding and generate gaps. In Brazil, we do not have legal gaps, but we have different possibilities of understanding the rules, and depending on the interpretation and depending on the bias, on how we or the law operators see the problem, they will have different interpretations. So we need to take care of that. And I know that Daniel Annenberg has tried to implement new actions to make more simple, I mean, the understanding of legal frameworks and the laws from the and decrease the bureaucracies required by law. And he's back in the municipal chamber to discuss that. And he created a new possibility to advance in this topic based on legal support. But we still have many complexities to overcome. We are yet to overcome this, and we also have a partnership with the ENAP and the federal government in an attempt to share nationwide our trainings, the materials we produce in São Paulo, our courses and our knowledge. This is a starting point. We do not create these projects to be left within a drawer. We want them to be implemented. And we have some projects within the innovation department, and we take successful programs and successful actions and initiatives, and we document them precisely to share these initiatives with other Brazilian cities and Brazilian states to help people understand how it happened and how if they can occasionally replicate these initiatives in their own regions. So this is another important bet that we make in the São Paulo City Hall. And let me talk a little bit about digital inclusion. Well, Annenberg also talked more about that, and we had some chat questions. Susanna talked about that. Sometimes we look at the raw numbers, and we say we're talking about 28%, 30% of the households that still need to be covered. But let me tell you, they are scattered. They are representatives. These households are representatives too in terms of the number of people that inhabit in one house, and there's also other complexities. Sometimes they could afford an internet connection, or they could rely on some wealth transfer project, but we lack basic infrastructure. Sometimes the internet access simply cannot reach that household. Through antennas, through cables, it's hard sometimes. It's about infrastructure too. And we've been discussing this in the municipal arena and also in the state arena. We are discussing the implementation of more technological infrastructure. It's very hard to deal with this lack of infrastructure. So when we talk about digital inclusion, we need to understand the digital and social vulnerabilities of our population. We work this in major areas. We have a coordination department that is only devoted, focused on digital inclusion and trying to expand our public network. And Annenberg talked about the internet points, or points of access, 300 today in the city of São Paulo. We know that even within the expanded
central area of the city of São Paulo, we still have problems regarding the free access to internet. And we talk about individual struggles of each citizens. They are expanded in these areas that are more densely populated. And we have increased our numbers. Our plan devised that. And we have democratized these points of access from a geographical standpoint. I mean, there's no point in placing many points of access in one central area or in areas that are already covered. No, we need to do more. We have now points of access in indigenous people's villages. So within a very rural area, an indigenous people area, we have points of access. So we need, that's the idea, decentralize this point of access so we can have an effectively democratic coverage to promote access through Wi-Fi, so people can reach public services and other services provided to us by the internet. We still have old infrastructures and structures and that need to modernize, and we need to help the elderly to access the internet. Well, we have a program with 300 points of access free, so people, the elderly and the other population can access these points to find, I mean, if they are young, they can find jobs, and if they are older, they can find services. I mean, the idea is to use these points also to train citizens so they can make the best use of this technological platform. Even so we teach them how to use WhatsApp or different apps, public and private apps. We also train them in these service units, which have been implemented, taking into consideration this new philosophy in the past few years. We have digital support infrastructure. Sometimes the citizen gets in, they have an app or they have a device in their smartphones. They have it there, but they cannot do it. They don't understand how to use the app. So the idea is that one public servant helps the citizen on how to use the app, on how to make this. So next time he can access the service from home or wherever he wants to be. If no problem if the citizen wants to go back to the service unit, we can teach them again. So this is an idea to tackle these challenges and problems, including the use of new technologies, in digital technologies. We have our labs, which are open to the general population. They can prototype materials. They can work using 3D printers. They can work with virtualized different programs, develop projects that are going to provide them with a new ability or capability so they can find jobs later on in the market. And we need to face digital literacy issues and also functional literacy. We have a program in the city of São Paulo, and even in our daycare centers, we want to implement these services to include children and to expand this coverage. And the idea is to eliminate digital illiteracy barriers. There's no point in having a device, know how to read and write, but there's no point in having that if I cannot understand the information I get, if I cannot interpret the information that I get. And Florian and Daniel Nenberg talked about how to structure these services, this care. We can simplify, maybe not giving manuals or complicated
guides to the citizens full of technicalities. No, we need to simplify this language to help them. So that's it. Oh yeah, thank you. And by the way, people don't read manuals. Many products don't even come with their guides or manuals anymore. Well, I would like you, Daniel Annenberg, to make your comments, and then we'll have each one talking for 3 or 5 minutes for their final comments. Thank you. Well, Ciro is right. Oftentimes in big cities, we have very complicated situations. In São Paulo, for example, and because of a legislation, as Daniel mentioned, a legislation that is old, and he talked about antennas, for example. Yes, the legislative power should be on to that, should deal with that. And the City Hall of São Paulo created a decree some days ago, and this decree sets forth the use of small cells and mini ERBs, the small antennas that allow us to little by little advance. And the federal government in the past few days took a leap, a huge step in this sense, showing that we can disbureaucratize the licensing and implementation of antennas in Brazil. Otherwise, we cannot launch 5G in Brazil. We have much to do, and the legislative bodies have a role to play. Well, second, we have the so-called Brazil cost. What is Brazil cost? Yes, we have bureaucracy, a bureaucracy that is part of things, and we also have a bureaucracy that is not necessary. So we have a tremendous opportunity, a huge opportunity with this digitalization and modernization processes to review process. And by doing that, we'll not only be able to digitalize, but also review things in Brazil or how things are done in Brazil. On the other hand, electronic services can tackle corruption in Brazil, which is one of our main problems. I mean, the more we have simplification and debureaucratization and more electronic services, they will act like antidotes against corruption. And they will help us decrease these Brazilian problems and also help decrease the so-called Brazil cost. Let me give an example. Example of the municipality of São Paulo, along with the state and federal government, which has to do with the opening of companies. Some years ago, it took 100 days to open a company in Brazil. I mean, on site. You needed to go to the IRS, the Brazilian IRS service. You needed to go to the Board of Registry and to the City Hall, to the City Council to open a company, to establish a business. It was extremely bureaucratic. So with the help of the state government and the federal government, we have now the possibility of opening a company in 3 to 4 days. Well, Florian must be thinking, oh, this is crazy. In Estonia, we can do that in hours. We know that in the United Kingdom, it takes 1 day, but now for us, it's 3 to 4 days. For us, it was a big advance. And it was terrible. And also another problem is if you want to close down a business, it's also very bureaucratic. You need to simplify these movements, these transactions. If you do that, you activate entrepreneurship, you generate jobs, you generate taxes for the government. So it's wonderful. Who gains with this extreme bureaucratization or the lack of electronic service are just a handful of people, a very small number of people. So we need to fight that. And another thing is data opening. We have now the implementation of the Data Protection General Law. And I mean, yes, anonymously and carefully protecting people, we need the public power to give more transparency to a series of things. We have seen in the Mobi Lab, which is the mobility lab of the City Hall of São Paulo, we have, I mean, when you open the data, you transform this data into information, and this is good for everyone, for startups, for the private initiative, to universities, the academia, the government, and for people,
most of all. So we need to think about people. I used to say, well, back when I was in the department, I mean, it's not enough to have a smart city. We need to have a human city, a city for the people. We need to think about this transition. Why? Because it will take us a while to perform this transition, and we cannot leave people behind. And I agree with Daniel when he said that if you cannot provide digital services, well, let's provide on-site offline services till the point we can reach the Rubicon and provide only online services or more online services. I insist, we need to have a nationwide digital inclusion program. This is an emerging need. This is a pressing need. We need to have a program that thinks about short-term goals and long-term goals, just like in other countries. We have the library in New York, the Italian government, other governments. I mean, you need to think about how to involve society, private initiative, and the different levels of government, so we all can understand that we will not reach this gap if we do not provide digital inclusion to all. This is our major goal for the next few years. So in 5 or 10 years time, we can look back and say, well, back then we created this program that covered or involved the whole of the population, especially the most vulnerable people who have more difficulty in accessing this. Thank you very much, Daniel. You talk about a very interesting thing, and I had this opportunity to talking to Florian when he talked about how to open a company in Estonia, and the quantity of Brazilian people who are opening virtual companies in Estonia. You don't even need to be in Estonia to do that. Oh, that's interesting. Well, Daniel Annenberg needs to leave 10 to 4, so we now listen to Florian. Florian, could you briefly mention this opening projects? I mean, if you want to have a company, what do you do in Estonia? And what are the 3 main challenges on the government end to continue in this journey of implementation of e-government? Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, I'll try to keep it short. Yes, as Daniel already mentioned, creating a company in Estonia goes a bit faster. I've set up my own one a few years ago, and it took me 20 minutes. So it's doable quite fast. And yes, people around the world can do it with what we call e-residency. Anyone can apply for that card, goes to the closest Estonian embassy or card pickup point, gets the card, and then can create that company within the European single market. This brings me to one of my points that I want to mention, and Daniel Annenberg already mentioned it as well. Citizen-centric approach rather than interest groups. Do not listen to the notaries. Do not listen to the doctors. Listen to the 99% of people that is your general population that is supposed to benefit from these solutions. So this is really hard to do because lobbies have power, they have money, they have influence, but ultimately you are responsible and accountable to the electorate, to the population that funds your government. The second point, and all of these points also relate to my experience being German, because I'm not actually Estonian. I've seen Germany struggle with digitalization for the last 10 or 20 years. First of all, flatten the hierarchies in the public sector and make it a more attractive place to work. I think, like the people that I see right now, you're inspiring, you know where you want to go. All of this is great to see. What I see in many other countries is that young people don't want to work for the government because it's seen as too hierarchical, bad pay, no targets, no vision, and this has to be thought in philosophy for all the different ministries and authorities. What holds back Germany and might hold back Brazil are the federal structures. In Germany, every single federal state does its own thing, and sometimes that's a good thing, because it allows individualization. But in national-led efforts, such as digitalization for the whole population, this becomes a challenge and it has to be managed. Lastly, the area of privacy has been mentioned already. Something that I just want to leave for you as food for thought. In Estonia, we have something called the data tracker, where I can see in the state portal every single time which authority has looked at what part of my data, when, and why. And this is something that sadly, Estonia basically is the only country that does that right now. And it would be sad if we would continue to be the only country, because it sort of reestablishes the balance of power between the citizens and the state and creates a more equal playground for both sides. So yeah, that would be it from my side. Thank you so much for listening.
Florian, muito obrigado. Eu já
Florian, thank you so much. And I'm going to give the floor to Ciro. Ciro, your last and final comments. And what are the biggest challenges that you see ahead? Is that the regulation? Is it workers training? Rodolfo, thanks again. Super high level, the debate here today, the discussion, we see that what's convergence, we have convergence in our visions, and that's kind of cool. And the biggest challenge of the Brazilian nation, the Brazilian state, is to have, again, to have a vision, like Florian said, centered in the citizen, in the society that are in need of this digitalization, and they want to have a relationship among themselves and with the government. So if we are working in the same organization for 10, 15 years, sometimes we disconnect from the reality. We live in that bubble of our jobs. We have to see how things are happening in the streets. And the second big challenge is this big integration, as Daniel said. Daniel Glassell said, in many cases in Brazil, there are gaps. There are overlaying, you know what I mean? It's like a federalized state that have many powers and many sub-levels and many sub-departments. And the citizen is bombed by so many approaches. I mean, he just wants to do one thing, and then out of a sudden, we have to integrate things in each sphere and in each power, of course, in each political power, but then because the citizen needs to see the government as one, you know what I mean? And we have to perceive the citizen as one. So I think the biggest challenge for us, it's very far to absorb the technological advance. It's much more of us to understand as responsible, as accountable to deliver to people, and we have to perceive ourselves as people that have to work in a more integrated, because Brazil always worked in fragmented ways, hierarchies, So now, no, we have, like he said, flattened that. And we do that. Personally, we're very good at that, but we have to do that, the academy, the government, and all the private and public sectors. So then bring the confidence of society, because it's so bad to have a country in which you don't trust the government. I mean, the society does not trust that organization, that institution. So that's urgent, I'd say. We urge to do that, not only the federal executive powers, but all levels, and judiciary and the legislative. Sorry. So we have to integrate ourselves more to deliver what society and citizens want. So, and I think that's what we have to do in order to contribute more than the digital governments. I think we have to be a social digital society. I think that's really nice. We've seen that so many professionals of the private sector are entering the government, are entering the public jobs. And that's funny, that's interesting. We noticed the worries of the government, the concerns in being more efficient and be more technological and so more modern. Daniel, your final comments, if you want to talk about challenges and so on.
Thank you for this opportunity of joining this webinar. Well, I'd like to mention about talk about something that Florian mentioned and what Ciro also discussed. We see this movement within the society, I mean, the Brazilian society especially. And we want people to join this institution, and we have seen a growing interest by the population. We created the Department of Innovation, and we have lines of people who want to work that, even for low wages, it's not an excellent pay, but people want to contribute, they want to help, they have professional abilities which are extremely diverse and important. And so we can see that this challenge can be overcome. Uh, Ciro discussed about having a line. Annenberg also talked about joining forces, I mean, working together in the municipal, state, and federal levels. I have seen a significant entrance of people with new profiles. They are eager to help and they are high skilled. And I'm sure we can tackle and deal with these challenges. I feel confident and happy. I'm not a person who is working, I haven't been working in the public arena for so long. I'm sort of new in the government, but I have seen this movement growing. Well, we talk about the need to innovate and stuff, but we still have other problems related to the old public infrastructure, things like lousy cables, lousy electrical network, let alone connectivity. We have terrible problems from the technological infrastructure that need to be solved by the public entities, by the public organizations, the government. We have tried to do that. At the same time, we develop technology, intensive technology with new machines for the server to work, increasing the connectivity links. We had 5,100 machines with only one point of Wi-Fi access. It's no longer like that. We changed that. We need to modernize the public infrastructure. We really remodeled this, and we are delivering in all um, municipalities. We are delivering resources. They all have cable network, different switches. Electrical network is working with AP to use data from the Wi-Fi standpoint. All of that is or has been completely remodeled with new machines. So, I mean, after modernizing the system and then amplify the contact with the population, and when needed, be able to provide the services. Well, let me talk about how to open a company. I worked with Sebrae, which deals with small-sized and middle-sized companies. And it's very good to now work at the municipality and to know that last month we had a record in the number of new companies in São Paulo. Why? Because it's easier now than before. So it's almost completely digital, and it's much faster now. So that bottleneck started to be dealt with. Before they needed accountants and so on. I mean, we like accountants and we need their work, but now it's more direct, it's easier and faster in São Paulo. And today we have the three areas of line, the municipality connected to the state and then to the federal government. This was done in stages, breaking some paradigms and internal and external barriers. I mean, Florian, we cannot open a company within 20 minutes, but well, it can be done in 20 minutes if it doesn't have physical infrastructure and so on. but it's not in 20 minutes, but it's 3 or 4 days now. So it's much easier to open a company, to have your business up and running today in Brazil. Today, we talk not only about to open a company, but also to make it legal, to legalize a company in Brazil in just a few days. That's huge. And we also need to make it easier for the population to access the services. They don't need to know if it's a municipal, state, or federal service. They don't see that. They know that they are talking to the public power, to the public authority. The important thing is that the service must be provided, must be available. We have a barrier of single login in our municipality. Each department, they want to have their own login. Oh, uh, they have their own platforms, and people just, I mean, the citizens, they do not understand that. So we need to make one single thing. So federal government has been working on that, and I believe this project will become even more relevant in the near future. So we have done strategies, we have created strategies to implement that in our municipality. And it's important to unify the services in the 3 levels of government. So the citizen needs to understand that they are requesting a service to the public power. The public power, the public authority will provide the citizen with that service. We need to complement and work together and overcome this within our different levels of the government. Well, thank you very much for your attention. Thank you for the invitation. Thank you, Daniel. You mentioned an important thing. Congratulations on this number of new companies. It's wonderful to see that even during this pandemic. It's wonderful to see that we have many new companies. Daniel Nenberg, the floor is yours for your final thoughts. First of all, I'd like to thank Abis for this invitation, and I'd like to thank the other speakers too. It was very interesting, so we can learn about the situation in Brazil from the municipal and state standpoints, and also from Estonian standpoint. Well, I have worked as a public servant for years, so I still believe in public servants, in the public service, but what I want is the government to be more direct, simpler, more transparent. We want a government to come from the citizens to the citizen. And like these projects such as Poupa Tempo and others, they have come to prove that the government has an important and key role to play. Today, we have technology, we have access to technology. I mean, the government has several means to advance quickly, but the challenge is to change culture, to change the mindset, or I mean, to convince people to change their ways, to look at things in a different way, to understand that they can do things in a diverse way. And technology is a way to convince people to do that. Well, I just received an email from the government telling me that I need to renew my passport. And also I get an email from the state government telling me 30 days in advance that I need to renew my driver's license. I mean, we need to anticipate to citizens' needs and help the citizen to solve their issues. I really like this type of government, and I believe technology is a means, a wonderful means for us to reach this sort of government. And a government should act as a means for us to decrease the huge inequalities we have in Brazil. I really like Abe's sentence in the sense, we in fact need to have a more digital Brazil and a less unequal Brazil. And the government needs to step up and do that. And do it. We need to consider all of these aspects and leave no one behind. This is very, very important. And then the different governments should work together, connect the organizations, I mean, the government organizations, institutions. And I believe we will leave this pandemic with more solidarity in mind, with a different view, and also convinced that we need to take huge steps to reach such government in all ways we can, on-site, offline, online, digital ways. I mean, to make citizens understand what the government has to offer and to understand that the government is by their side, is a government for the citizens. Thank you again for the invitation, Rodolfo. Thank you all and everyone who is participating in this afternoon. I would like to thank all the participants. I would like to thank Florian, Daniel, Ciro, and Daniel Glasswell. Well, we know that we still have big challenges ahead of us, but if you look back some months ago and some years ago, we have come a long way, I believe. And this is wonderful to see. And it's wonderful to see the example in Estonia. I mean, uh, we have advanced and we have examples to learn from too. And this work is the work of you, people who devote their lives to the public sector, to the digital processes. Thank you for the work you have been developing. And Florian, our friend from Estonia, I know it's kind of late. I wish you have a wonderful evening in Estonia. Thank you so much. And well, our next webinar will discuss digital transformation by the end of September. Remember that. And
Bye.
thank you very much and see you. I would like to
Yeah.
thank our
Muito
Anda
obrigada.
and Simone. Thank you very much. Thank you, Jamile,
Thank you.
Abis, and all the organizing committee, Claudia, Chris, who
Obrigada. Tchau,
have
gente.
helped us. Thank you, Rodolfo. Thank you, Daniel, Ciro, Florian, Abis.
Muito grato, turma. Muito grato a vocês.
Thank
Thanks,
you. Thank you,
Florian, he said.
everybody.
Thanks,
Daniel
Florian.
Glassel. If
Bye.
you think it's convenient, e-government can be in the municipality. We could share the strategies. We've been discussing that. We'll do that. Let's do it. I'll call you.
Tchau, gente. Tchau, Rodolfo.
Bye
Até.
bye. See you. Thank you very much.